What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here, back with JaboctheGreat. Once again, we have another episode of The Last Word. Big weekend in college football. We saw two top 10 teams going down, and the first of those being Oregon in a matchup against Washington. This was a 7-8 matchup between two rivals. Obviously, this is the biggest matchup in the Pac 12 so far this year. And the win 33 in a once again exciting game that's going to definitely have playoff implications going forward.
Yeah, this is an exciting one. This is one that we were excited to see. We got it a little wrong. Actually, I think I said very directly if it came down to a close game, I think Oregon would pull it out. And it is a very close game, 36-33, and Washington did pull it out. But if you remember from last week's video, I did say that I really like Michael Penix, and I would like to see him win this game. He came out and had a great day. So looking at it on paper, Michael Penix, top-tier Heisman candidate right now, goes 22 for 37, 302 yards, throws 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. Dylan Johnson has a great day on the ground for Washington, getting 100 yards and a touchdown. In the air, Rome Odunze gets 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Big day for him. And then Jalen Polk also gets 118 yards and a touchdown. So huge days in the air for Washington's receiving core. Giles Jackson also gets essentially 60 yards and a touchdown. All of them having a good day, and that's a clean game, right? There's just not a lot going on as far as forcing Oregon to turn over the ball. They just keep getting ahead of them, keep outscoring them. Just a fun game for Washington. For Oregon, Bo Nix goes 33 for 44, 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Pretty good game for him. Oregon's rushing game was also really good. Bucky Irving goes for 127 yards and a touchdown. Jordan James gets 63 yards and a touchdown, so big days for them. Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson had pretty good days in the air. Franklin led 154 yards and touchdown. Johnson was behind him with 71 yards. But Patrick Herbert, the little brother of Justin Herbert, scored the other touchdown. Also had some 2-point conversions in there. So good day for them. Jaleel Florence was the one to get that one interception on Michael Penix. And then as the game came down to kind of an interesting close, as Washington scores in this really, really quick 2-play drive, and Oregon still has time to stay alive and try to get something going. They get down to the end, and Camden Lewis actually misses the game-tying field goal attempt. So this could have been an overtime game. I'm not sure how it would have went from there. This was already an exciting back-and-forth game, but not a whole lot of glaring mistakes to clean up. There's some issues for Oregon towards the end of this game, right? They turn it over on downs. They allow Washington to score a touchdown in 2 plays in 30 seconds. Then they get back down and miss a field goal. It's a rough ending for them, but Washington turned it over on downs just before that, and Oregon. It had been a good close game the whole game. So there's not a whole lot to look at to say like, man, this was really bad. They just had a good old-fashioned rivalry shootout, and Washington came out on top.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a few things, here, of course, missing the field goal at the end could have sent it to overtime. And I'm sure in overtime, probably would have gone to like 3 or 4. Wouldn't surprise me. But, the missed field goal, turning it over as well, it's not too much really here to talk about. As far as like mistakes, it was just like a great game between two teams that are pretty evenly matched. And just to start off with here, the first two drives, 7 plays for each team, both punted after those plays, and I'm like, there's no way. Like we knew coming into this game, we saw what Oregon did, and a lot of people probably watched Oregon against Colorado. We saw what they did. You might not have watched many Washington games this year, but if you've been keeping up with it, you've seen what they've been doing, led by Michael Penix Jr. all season. I think I can't remember, but I think they said early in the broadcast that they were averaging almost 100 combined points a game coming into it. Like that gives you an idea like what kind of game this is going to turn out to be. Um, so there wasn't really too much anything unexpected here. Once they got through those initial struggles at the beginning, just 5 straight drives and touchdowns alternating between each team. And Oregon at the beginning, so this definitely seemed, you might not know too much about Dan Lanning, before the Colorado game, of course, where he made some comments trying to fire up his team at halftime. But this seemed like a thing that he would do. Go for 2 on just your first touchdown because Washington already scored. And it's like, it was a good decision because you got it. Um, And at that point, it's 8-7. It's like, okay, it's going to be that type of game here where every point is really going to matter. Um, and things like that are really going to be the difference in the end. So again, you had 5 straight drives of touchdowns, long drives all the way down the field, every one of them being 75 yards or more. Um, just really great offensive displays. Team. It really wasn't until the end of the half that we had miscues from both teams. You had this weird kind of drive, everything was going on with Washington. Their last drive, um, finalized by a Michael Penix interception, which just wasn't a good pass there. That was probably the worst, obviously the worst pass to throw all day, but not too many times where you can look at him and say, "Oh, he made a bad pass here." There was a little bit of a stretch where we'll get into it in a second, where Washington really didn't do much. A couple drives in a row, a few drives in a row, didn't do anything. That's where Oregon took the lead finally. But yeah, outside of that interception, and not too many passes where you can say it was bad. He was pretty good all game, despite the completion percentage. But the Anderson there gave the ball to Oregon right at midfield, right about midfield at the 49. And going for it, you can say, they lost on that missed field goal, right? But like they had 3 chances already to get inside. They had 2 incompletions out of 3 plays. It's like you should have just kicked the field goal there. And I didn't like the call. It's easy to say in hindsight, but I didn't like the call when it first happened. So not taking the three there, you're still down at halftime 22-18. And maybe their thought process was, let's just go for the touchdown all or nothing there. Considering they only had like a minute left anyway. But I just felt like they should have just taken it, because now if you take the field goal, there's no way they're gonna miss. Take the field goal, you're only down 1 point. You got the ball to start the half too. So that's where they kind of got screwed there, because then they have the punt and effort drive coming out. Washington scores. Now you're down 11 points, and Washington, outside of that interception, they haven't shown that they've been able to be slowed down at all in this game.
Yeah, so I mean, right there is probably definitely the biggest thing you can look at, and it's an interesting call, right? You're on first and goal with Washington, you move it up to the 3 by third down. It's about to be in the half. You could easily kick a field goal there. That is a really rough call to make sometimes, because the coach, obviously, Oregon's coach, is all, all about getting as many points as possible. But that's a tough one, right? Because if they get that field goal, then theoretically nothing changes the rest of the game. We do go to overtime, right? 33-36, because of the weird scoring that they ensued with going for 2. But that doesn't happen, and so then later on, when you start turning over on downs and you miss a field goal, things look a little worse. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, these two teams. There's a stretch at the early part of this game where it's just amazing football, right? Both teams punt, and then touchdown, 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 touchdown. We see some kind of score management going on, right? As Oregon goes for 2, and then Washington scores a touchdown, makes it 14-8. Oregon scores another touchdown, gets 15-14, and then Washington's finally like, okay, we're gonna fix this 1 point gap. Goes for 2 on their next touchdown, make it 22-18 or make it 22-15. But then Washington gets held to Oregon gets held to that field goal, making it 18-22. We get into that weird score range. And after that, of course, you have the interception that Oregon just doesn't end up capitalizing on because of the missing or not going for the field goal at the end there, almost getting a touchdown, but coming up short. And then yeah, second half after that, it's pretty much. Oregon definitely scored more. They almost doubled their first half score again. But a lot of that afterwards is just a lot of Washington. Right? They get a touchdown, and it kind of just feels like you're in this lost area because of that 11-point gap. So in a way, that aggressive coaching, that forcing Washington to want to go for 2 and add up a score, you get into this territory where the points are a little weird. And it wouldn't be that different. If it was, they just went for extra points the whole time, the scores would essentially be the same. But those field goals and 2-point conversions start to add up and get a little weird, and can kind of bite you if you're not careful at the end of a game if a team matches you and takes that aggression against you. And that's what Washington was able to do. They don't have a glaring issue outside of Michael's interception in the first half. And I mean, yeah, they had to punt on some drives in the second half. They turned over on downs, but they score when they need to. They come through and take down a big rival, get a big win. I think they moved up to 5, and then Oregon and kind
Hmm.
of stayed where they were. So big results for Washington, trying to fight for that top spot, just sitting right outside of that top 4. This was something they really needed. Oregon, that's not a good one. We talked about this before. If this conference is going to start kind of eating itself alive as they keep playing each other, and Oregon certainly did not want to take this loss to Washington and have that happen. Washington now currently second in the Pac-12 conference standings because USC having that extra game against the conference being 4-0 right now. But yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll see how this conference rolls out, but this gives Washington a really strong look at leading this conference if they can hold off the rest of their conference opponents as the season goes on.
Yeah, and just to finish out, like going back to those later parts of the game, Dan, he took the blame there. I mean, coaches obviously, but he took the blame, with the loss there, just because some of the decisions that they made, and obviously the field goal missing. That's not on the coach, but decisions throughout the game, he took blame for that. Um, and there was a part where it really could have gotten bad because I mentioned they go up 29-18. They get down all the way again inside the red zone, inside the 10. They don't need to get a touchdown. Actually, they can get a first down at like the 5, I think. And they go for it and complete again. And now I'm thinking, like, all right, it's 29-18. There's only a few minutes left in the third. Washington goes down. Like, Oregon's cooked. But as you mentioned it, Washington, they can't do anything on the next few drives. Then they make a decision that's a little questionable. I understand at that point they were down 4 now because Oregon went on a little run. But I just don't know. I didn't really like that call. Again, it's easy in hindsight to go, say, oh, you went for it and you didn't get it, so you shouldn't have done it. I understand why they did it, but with how the momentum in the game had shifted up to that point, Oregon, scoring 2 straight touchdowns and you haven't done anything on 2 straight drives, I feel like they should have just points because again, flip scenario, they would have been down just 1 point and you wouldn't even have given them the opportunity to go down and get the field goal tie. Um, but they were able to that big play on first down, just a couple drives or 2 drives later. One for them. Get that big play on first down, then you get a touchdown. Penix Jr. coming up big. Then Oregon misses that field goal. And it's just a game of inches. There's a couple things that change the outcome of the game. And as you mentioned, it definitely changed the outlook of the Pac-12. Now, if Oregon having one loss, I mean, that's a big deal. They still have to play. Utah is up there still, USC, who we're going to talk about in just a second here. Oregon State to finish out. Still got some ranked teams to kind of get the resume up a bit. But, even though it's a loss to a top 10 team, it's a tough loss because it's a game they could have had. But just a few things that they let go Washington's way. And credit to Washington for getting that win out there.